as we embarked on this incredible journey together. Time has flown by, and time does that. It flies by quickly, especially when you're having fun. My Entrepreneurship Journey podcast was started in 2022 in October, and now we are in November. We've just recently celebrated our 1-year anniversary. The podcast was started to inspire, to educate, and to grow together. It was started to be a toolbox we can all refer to now and in the future. And this is happening all thanks to you, our amazing and fantastic listeners. Your unwavering support and your feedback has been the driving force behind our podcast success. You keep us going. Month after month, you've joined us in exploring the fascinating world of entrepreneurship, of innovation, of business. Your dedication to our show has been the motivation, really, that keeps us going, and it's your engagement that help us keep going forward. A special thanks to our exceptional guests that came here on the podcast and more to come. Thank you. Your engagements has helped us shape the content we create here. Talking about our listenership, I would like to go right now at the back end of our hosting platform and check analytics, so I can thank you individually from wherever in the world you listen. Let's have a look. South Africa. Thank you so much for your unwavering support. Thank you for tuning in week after week, month after month. Lesotho, my home country, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. United States, United Kingdom, Australia, thank you. France, thank you guys over there for tuning in. Philippines, Kenya, Canada, Germany, thank you guys. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. India, thank you. Eswatini, Swaziland, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Tanzania, Zimbabwe, thank you. Monaco, thank you. Nigeria, Haiti, thank you for tuning in. Denmark, Portugal, wow, thank you. I'm really full of gratitude. Botswana and Chile, thank you so much. Remember to click the follow or subscribe button from whichever platform of your choice where you get your podcasts, be it Spotify, we are there. Google Podcasts, you can find us there. Apple Podcasts, you can find us there. Amazon Music, you can find us there. TuneIn, Alexa, you can find us there. Stitcher, you can find us there. Really, wherever you access your podcast, you can find us there. Please remember to click the follow or the subscribe button. This helps us in more ways than one. Remember to do that. Thank you, so that we can keep on growing. 1 year in, we've had the privilege of interacting and talking to inspiring entrepreneurs and business leaders. They came here on the platform to share valuable insights, for free, and providing the platform for exchange of ideas and experiences. And I'm happy to say we've grown together, and we are continually inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit that unites us all, and our common shared thirst to grow our respective economies together. And as we reflect on this momentous occasion, I really want to express our heartfelt gratitude. Your subscriptions, your likes, your shares, your reviews, social media interactions have not only helped us reach a broader audience, as you have seen, but have also created a vibrant community of like-minded individuals passionate about business. If you like to hit me, not hit me. No hitting, please. If you like to engage with me privately, yes, do hit me up on my email, difua@mergepodcast.com. I'll be happy to talk to you. Our mission is to continue delivering content that educates, inspires, and empowers you on your entrepreneurial journey, that toolbox. We have exciting plans for the future, more insightful interviews, informative episodes, and perhaps even some surprises along the way. So hang on and tune in. So here's to you, our fantastic listeners, 1 year in. Thank you for being part of this incredible year. We can't wait to see what the future holds. Keep sharing your thoughts, please, ideas and suggestions with us. As I said, hit me up on thefu@meshpodcast.com because you know what? You are the voice that is at the heart of what we do here. So once again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for your support. Here's to many more years of learning, growing, and achieving together. My next guest journey compelled me to go back to my favorite book, Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. So I'll just read a brief excerpt from the book. They crossed the desert for another 2 days in silence. The alchemist had become much more cautious because they were approaching the area where the most violent battles were being waged. As they moved along, the boy tried to listen to his heart. It was not easy to do. In earlier times, his heart had always been ready to tell its story. But lately, that wasn't true. There had been times when his heart spent hours telling of its sadness. And at other times, it became so emotional over the desert sunrise that the boy had to hide his tears. His heart beat fastest when it spoke to the boy about treasure, and more slowly when the boy stared entranced at the endless horizons of the desert. But his heart was never quiet, even when the boy and the alchemist had fallen into silence. Why do we have to listen to our hearts? The boy asked when they had made camp that day. Because wherever your heart is, that is where you will find your treasure. This takes me back to the Wisdom of Sundays book by Oprah Winfrey, Iyanla Vanzant quote, where she said, "Your vision is for you, and there will be many times when other people can't see your vision. And that's all right, because if God gave you vision, God will give you provision. God is not going to bring your provision through your sister's vision. It's going to come to you, for you, through you, as soon as you eliminate deficiencies." Daniela is a seasoned executive with over 22 years of professional experience in the private sector as well as in international development, with extensive work throughout Europe, Australia, Africa, and the USA, in international sales and marketing, PR, business development, and social entrepreneurship. She has successfully grown companies to new levels of success, designed and launched social enterprises, and led diverse teams in various competitive sectors, from educational services, manufacturing, to corporate B2B events. Daniela is very passionate about social enterprise and the way it can catalyze developing countries into finding solutions that help eradicate poverty in a dignified, sustainable way that does not create dependency. After seeing endless development projects fail, combined with the fact that 95% of social impact funding is invested in foreign rather than local entrepreneurs, Daniela decided to start up a non-profit called RISE. RISE stands for Relationships Inspiring Social Enterprise, which is registered both in the USA and Lesotho, focusing on economic development through job creation, skill development, and entrepreneurship, specifically in the built environment, by linking aspiring African entrepreneurs with essential resources needed in order for the enterprises to flourish. Currently piloting in Lesotho, based on the success of the initial pilot, RISE will expand into other parts of Africa, since the problem of youth unemployment as well as the need for infrastructure development is rampant throughout the continent. As an integral part of entrepreneurship development, RISE promotes networking and encourages international peer-to-peer exchange of ideas and knowledge through workshops and other exchange initiatives. This is my entrepreneurship journey, a show about entrepreneurs, innovators, and thought leaders. I'm Difo Machele, and welcome. Daniela, thank you very much. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here.
Can you tell us about your organization, RISE, and the work you do?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks again for having me today. So RISE is a not-for-profit social enterprise. And the name RISE actually is an acronym. It stands for Relationships Inspiring Social Enterprise. It's also the last four letters of the word enterprise. And that's what we're all about. We're all about reducing poverty through entrepreneurship. And we very much believe in investing in the resource that Africa has, which is its youth, in order to empower youth so that they're able to transform from being job seekers into job creators. So we very much focus our work on skills development, employment opportunities, and entrepreneurship development through a design, build, and entrepreneurship program called In Loco, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit. But we basically do two fundamental things. One is we partner with vulnerable communities who need infrastructure development, and we work with them in order to design and build the infrastructure that they need, also using better building techniques and building materials. And in doing that, we run our fellowship program, which is In Loco, which is a training program, a very hands-on practical training program where young recent graduates from the built environment get to design and build in a practical manner. So they get essential work skills, hard skills, as well as soft skills that they need in order to run their own businesses. And then we have a business incubation program after they complete their fellowship program for 3 years, where we help them establish their own businesses and become successful, entrepreneurs in whichever sector they start their businesses in. So that is, in a nutshell, what RISE is and what we do.
And what inspired you to start, and especially in Lesotho? Why Lesotho?
Good question. So what inspired me to start RISE was actually I was at a conference in Nairobi in 2016, and I came across a really frightening statistic, which is that 90% of social impact investing goes to foreign entrepreneurs working in Africa rather than local African entrepreneurs. And that hit me to the core. It was that one statistic that I just felt was very wrong and something needed to be done about it. And my background before moving to Africa, I moved to Lesotho actually in Africa in 2009. My background was sales and marketing and entrepreneurship and startups. So I come from a very entrepreneurial family. So that is my go-to place for solutions. And actually, this leads to answering your second question, why Lesotho. In 2009, I decided I had enough of the private sector and I had always had a yearning to live and work in Africa, but I didn't think I had anything to offer because I'm not, a doctor or an agricultural specialist or an irrigation specialist. But I have a business background, and I came for 3 months to volunteer with a not-for-profit social enterprise called Kick for Life. Not sure if you're familiar with them, but they use sport as a tool for social change. And that is when I discovered what social enterprise was. I had never heard of the concept before until that point. And that was my moment of understanding what I was put on this earth to do. So I ended up, 3 months became 3 years. I was running Kick for Life for those years from 2009, 2013, and developed a lot of the center, what is today now the number 7 restaurant and the hotel and the football, 5 five-a-side football field. And so when in 2016, after I left Lesotho, worked in East Africa and went back to New York, and then was deciding where to set up Rise on the continent, it was natural for me to choose Lesotho because of three main reasons. One is Lesotho often gets forgotten about, and there is not as much programming there, especially in the entrepreneurship sector. There's a lot of health-related work, and I always felt in the years that I lived and worked there previously was the root cause of a lot of social problems we have in the country are due to economic desperation and poverty and lack of opportunity. So there was definitely the need, and not many other organizations working in it. In that sector. I also then came to visit Lesotho again after having been away for a few years, and at least saw that there was some. At that point, there was Vodacom Innovation Park, there was 10, the Entrepreneurs Network set up. So at least I felt, well, we won't be working in complete isolation. There is the beginning of an ecosystem that we could contribute towards in terms of entrepreneurship development. And then the third reason is it's always easier to start in a small country, to pilot something, to have access to national leaders and government officials and so on, to test something out before we then take it to other countries. So those were the main reasons for choosing Lesotho, plus a personal connection that I had with the Mountain Kingdom from years back.
Oh, and this is beautiful. And now there you were, with this passion, and you're going to follow this because it's a burning desire inside of you. Now you come with your entrepreneurship and business background, now focusing on the built environment and architecture. When those first few months now, when you started, how was the reception? Did you encounter any hurdles?
We encountered all the hurdles that you can imagine. I mean, the reception was very positive. We communicated with, we contacted the main academic institutions who teach built environment subjects. So that was Lerotori Polytechnic and Lim Kong Kwing University, and also CUT actually in Bloemfontein, because a number of Basotho students, study there. And their reception was fantastic, because this is obviously a program that leads to opportunities for their alumni and their graduates. What was extremely challenging was when you're dealing in construction, you have to deal with land, and getting clear title of land was our very first hurdle. I mean, the first project we did was with an orphanage that was overcrowded, that I knew personally from, I used to volunteer there in Sekamaneng. And when I went to revisit them, I'd seen that, the Ministry of Social Development was still placing a lot of children there. And they were just, 25, 30 girls and boys just sharing 2 rooms, sleeping on the floor, in very crowded conditions. So our first challenge was seeking land title that was clear so that we could build an extension for that orphanage. So that kind of delayed the project, because we had to find another piece of land, and finding land with clear title is really, really hard in Lesotho. It's a very big problem. There's multiple people who claim they own one piece of land. And also the fact that the real estate sector is not regulated. So we've got a lot of work to do in that. And then, lots of challenges with regards to halfway through the project. Our main donor had to back out because of financial challenges. So there was funding challenges along the way. And then all the sort of human side of things that we had not taken into consideration, dealing with the dynamics of 20. We recruited 20 young fellows because we thought we'd have a high dropout rate, but they didn't drop out. But dealing with all the personalities and the challenges of all these young, fresh out of school sort of graduates, their personalities and conflicts and all kinds of things that required a lot of time and energy that we sort of didn't take into consideration at the beginning, or didn't think was and skills, coming to understand that although they covered certain modules during their academic time at university or polytechnic, they still needed a lot of work on, how to use Excel, how to put put together a bill of quantities, how to draw, how to design.
Ah,
So yeah, having to work on some of the basics as well. So yeah, a lot of challenges, a lot of learnings, and that's how we our motto is learning by doing. So with each
yes, yes.
cohort of fellows, we learn and we try and improve, and we learn from
Yeah.
those situations and mistakes. So each cohort we try and improve on that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And on the issue of land that you touched on and, how unregulated the environment is, any wins so far? Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel?
Um, I think people are becoming more aware of, what are the regulations. I think the town planners and local
Mm,
councils are very overwhelmed with workload. So we've done quite a lot of work in our 6 years of existence in holding meetings and forums for architects and developers to hear the challenges that planners have and that city councils have, because like that, at least by sitting around a table and understanding each other's perspectives makes life um, a little bit easier. At least one can understand why those challenges exist. But there's
mm,
still a lot of work to be done. So I'm seeing that awareness is the first, step, and then, steps to be implemented. I know that the Ministry of Local Government has been working hard at developing certain policies and platforms to try and address this, but we've got a long way to go. We've got, the
yeah,
professional bodies that have yet to be fully established and regulated. But these things are large, complex issues. They don't happen overnight. Every country in the world has been through it. Or is going through it.
yeah,
So we've actually just finished now a 1-year program with Ireland that was funded by Irish Aid to have an exchange of knowledge and information between what Ireland went through and what Lesotho is going through and still has to go through. So at least we can benefit from other countries' experiences, mistakes, and try and fast track some of those steps.
yeah, yeah. Okay, and earlier we we touched a little bit about the in local fellowship program. So how is it going so far? Do you see the youth getting interested to be onboarded on the program, the business incubation program? How is all of that going so far?
Yeah, so we're now running our fifth in loco fellowship, our fifth cohort,
Wow.
and we check in with the when the fellows graduate, they become pioneers. They chose that name for themselves, by the way. Our methodology of working is very inclusive and participatory.
Mm,
Also, we very much believe in community driven development. We want to ensure we do not create situations of dependency. And the pioneers who've gone through our fellowship, we check in with them every 3 months or so to see their progress. And we've been very pleased with the results. So far, we've had about 50 fellows graduate. They've established over about 32 companies, employing over, on average, each fellow, once they graduate,
yeah.
employs 5 other people within 3 months of graduating. So that's really
Wow.
impressive. We see the kind of
Yeah.
ripple effect and benefits of the program, and their monthly income on average increases, again within about 3 months of graduating, increases by over 40% each month. So that's also really encouraging. And we've referred a lot of projects to them. They're doing more and more impressive work and bigger projects.
Mm,
So yeah, it's all positive results in terms of seeing them increasing their income, increasing employment for other people, and their own
yeah.
companies being registered. So, and actually now our current in loco fellowship is working on the Stadium of Life for Kick for Life. So it's funny how the two
Okay.
organizations now turn full circle, and we're taking on a very ambitious project because it's very large to build a football
Yeah.
stadium.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's very exciting. And we also, use every project we do, we make sure that there's an element of design that is improving the quality of architecture and design through passive design, through better insulation. And now more recently, we're focusing on the building materials themselves because, we have a big problem in Lesotho with our very cold, long winters, and our
Yes.
buildings are
Yes.
just not made for them. There's lack of insulation. There's no cavity walls. The building materials with concrete blocks are very cold in winter,
Yeah. Yeah.
and hot in summer with the corrugated metal sheets. So we're trying to educate and improve on those building materials, and also see what building materials can be manufactured locally to generate more jobs, have
Yeah.
better thermal insulation, and have a lower carbon footprint as well. So that's more recent work that we've now started focusing on.
So talking about that, Daniela, there is a friend of mine who he always complains every winter to say, Dufour, Lesotho is one of the coldest countries in Africa, but I do not think our buildings and our houses are built as such, especially here in the lowlands. It's so cold, and it takes a lot of money to heat our homes in winter. As much as our winter is not that long, but it can get extremely cold. And so when I was reading one publication you wrote, and you were talking about, the compressed earth blocks to build. Do
Mm-hmm.
you wish to talk about that a little bit, how they are the good conductors of heat, and if it's a new thing we can start looking into?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. It's not new at all. I mean, adobe bricks, our oldest building in Lesotho, built in the 1840s, the
Okay.
Maida House in Morija, is made from clay bricks. Basically, you take the earth. I mean, Mother Nature gives us all the elements we need.
Yeah.
The difference is the compression. So those bricks are called adobe, but basically it means that they were just made with by hand, and they weren't compressed. But if you go into that building, I mean, it's still a beautiful building. It's by the printing press in Morija. It's still beautiful. It's a thatch roof, and you go in there in the summer and it's cool inside. You go there in the winter and it's warm inside. And the reason is better thermal efficiency, because it basically keeps the temperature in the building. So the trouble with concrete is it allows all of the cold in. It doesn't insulate at all, and the metal roofs as well. So, and the metal roofs also conduct the heat. So when the sun is on, the heat comes down. So this is not new technology. It's been around for thousands of years. And in fact, if you look at the rondevels, how they're built, it's called wattle and
Yeah.
daub with the cob and straw and wood straw and wooden sort of and ant hill additives as well to improve the binding of the material. This is indigenous architecture, which we need to learn from. And the challenge is people have this negative association with poverty, with anything that's indigenous, and anything that comes from the Western world. They see it as progress, right? So they see concrete blocks as a better material, but in actual fact, it's thermal conductivity makes it a very unpleasant, material to use, especially when you don't build with cavity walls, to at least have some form of insulation. And we have a habit also,
Yeah.
we don't build with double glazing. So all, the air, we spend all this money burning paraffin or charcoal or electricity to heat inside. And then the heat leaks out through all those cavities in between our doors and our windows. So we have some
Yeah.
very poor practices, which is why we have very cold houses in wintertime. And, this last winter lasted for five months. So it's a long time.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
ends up costing a lot of money and also costing the environment, because we're increasing, carbon into the air when we are burning these fossil fuels such as paraffin and charcoal.
Yes.
So there's both the economic and the environmental negative aspect. So we're very excited that we are, we're running a workshop actually next week in Morija on compressed earth blocks. We got a press that's just arrived. And we are going to be partnering with Habitat for Humanity to build the country's first prototype from compressed earth blocks to try and get over the challenge of poor quality cold houses. So that's something we're sort of working towards. There's also other materials we want to experiment with, such as hempcrete. That's a material that's extracted from the stalks of the plant hemp, which is a different plant from the plant you use for medicinal cannabis, that has fantastic thermal qualities and actually absorbs carbon from the atmosphere. So it's what's called a carbon sink material, which is what we want, right? Because all this carbon in the atmosphere is what's leading to global warming.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, interesting. Talking about this building materials, Daniela, I know one of your projects you undertook in 2019 was building a center for intellectual disability and autism in Lesotho, in Habuasono. Can we talk a little bit about that experience and the process of designing and building such a specialized structure? The reason I'm asking this question is because when I was reading and going through your work with the structure, and I saw words like sensory materials and sensory sensitivities, I'm thinking, wow, this could be the first of its kind in the country to have such a structure. I know this well because we are raising a beautiful boy with autism, and we are quite aware of those intricacies, in involving, their lives and sensory issues and sensory sensitivity. So when I saw that, I thought, hang on. So these people
Yes,
did
absolutely.
their research, and this could be one of the first in the country. Can we talk about that process of going through that?
Sure, absolutely. So like all of our projects, the very first thing that we do is hold a participatory design workshop before we start designing anything. And we invite all the key stakeholders to attend that workshop. And that includes all the intended users of the infrastructure, the governing body of the community organization or project that we've partnered with, as well as the neighboring organizations who are going to be, who are physically located neighboring the infrastructure, because the more involvement they have, the less likely there's going to be theft or vandalism, because we need to hear what their needs are as well. So as much as possible, we try and encompass and include their needs into the designs wherever possible. As well as the relevant ministries or government bodies related to that subject area. So we did that for IDAL. IDAL is a parent-led not-for-profit association with parents who've got children who have autism or other intellectual disabilities. And we learned a lot about their challenges and their needs. They had bought a piece of land in Haboasono years ago. I think it was 23 years, and they never had enough funding to develop the project. I think an architectural firm had designed something conceptually, but the budget needed was something like 30 million, and it was way over, any form of budget that they could raise funds for.
Yeah.
And they had a small, limited budget, I should say, not small, but from Standard Lesotho Bank and their corporate partners through their golf tournament. And they said, what could you do for us for this amount? It was around 1 million Maluti. And so we held a participatory design workshop. We heard a lot about what their needs were, both from the parents' perspective, who were looking for a kind of a respite center where they could drop off their kids while they, did errands and other life things, and knew that their children would be in a safe place, as well as they wanted somewhere where their kids and young adults would be learning some form of life skill, because they're worried about their ability to earn a living once they passed away and what was going to happen to them in the longer term. And also for them themselves to get some training in diagnosis and in parental sort of how can they help the development needs of their children. And then we also heard from the kids themselves and the youth, with disabilities and with autism, and then the neighbors and stuff as well, the neighboring sort of community. So we took all of that into consideration. We developed a master plan because the land was quite large. And we developed a master plan to take everybody's needs into consideration that was split into phases, because obviously you can't do everything at once. But
Yeah.
the first phase was actually building the center itself, which, because to take into consideration all the different needs, we designed it in a cross-shaped, so that it could have 4 different spaces with different entrances that can be used concurrently, with a central space in the middle. So it can also be used as one large space, or as 4 independent spaces with 4 quadrants outside as well. So ultimately you had, 8 different spaces you could work with. And then we converted a container also into a diagnostics room and a multi-sensory room. So we could encompass everybody's needs and desires, and then the additional phases, which is for future development, as agriculture and an auditorium and income generating activities. But the center itself was also designed so that it could be rented out. And I know that they have rented it out for weddings and parties and things like that, so that they could generate income to run the programs. And then the material we used, because the area is for agricultural use, so it couldn't be anything permanent. So we actually developed, thanks to an Italian engineer as well, who helped design. It's all above ground. We had 270 tires donated, which are basically inserted into the ground, and some cement is poured into that for the timber columns. The whole center is built from timber. So that, you can actually, in theory, dismantle the entire building and remove it and not have any evidence that it was ever there. So it's not classified as a permanent building. And of course, aesthetically, and from a heat perspective, heat comfort, it's great, because timber is fantastic for thermal efficiency, and you can, it's warmer in winter and cooler in summer. And it's a very nice material also from acoustics perspective, as well as comforting. There's been a lot of research in timber in terms of its benefits to your emotional state, and state of mind, and with fantastic views, so that would help, the participants in the building be at one with nature, but also be able to focus on the activities going on inside as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. Is the center functional now, for its primary role? Do you know?
So they have got some programming. I think on Wednesdays there are programs running. There have been challenges with funding and with personnel, because, as I said, it's a parent-led association who run full-time jobs, as well as, so that's the challenge with voluntary organizations. They never have enough resources in terms of manpower and funding to operate fully. The multi-sensory room is yet to be set up. The space is there. They have some equipment, but not fully set up. So it is running on a part-time basis, yes.
Yeah, I see. Okay. I attended this Standard Bank Women's Conference the other week, and there were a couple of women that were raising that, I would like to be a social entrepreneur and I don't know where to start. And I was advising them, you better be tuning into this podcast in the few coming weeks, because we will be talking about this. And what is social entrepreneurship, Daniela? I mean, even when I was going through, academic literature, there wasn't much on covered on social entrepreneurship. There is literature, but it was minimal, and there was minimal comprehension, on how it functions in comparison, to the traditional or commercial entrepreneurship.
Well, very simply put, I mean, a company, a for-profit company or organization is set up for profit. It has to make a profit for its shareholders, and it gives out, dividends at the end of the year, based on its profit margin. Now, a social enterprise has got to run like a company, in that it's got to offer a service or a product that people are willing to pay for. So it has to remain efficient, effective, and relevant, because otherwise people will stop buying your service or product, and then that will limit your ability to survive, basically. But the difference is that profit, which we call actually surplus in the social enterprise world, but your profit, once you've covered all your costs, does not go to shareholders, but it goes back into the programming. So it allows you to self-finance yourself and guarantee your future, and it goes back into the projects that you're working on, whether they're for communities or for the environment. So unlike a not-for-profit is 100% reliant on on donors or grants, and their money, when the money comes in, it gets spent, and also you have to kind of somehow adapt yourself according to donors' needs and grant needs, which means sometimes, I call it at times, you have to prostitute yourself based on what the next call for proposals are, and sometimes that's not what is really needed. And instead of being market driven and responding to a need and a demand, you're actually being donor driven and responding to the supply, which is a very old fashioned way. If you apply that to the private sector, it used to be when cars were first manufactured, and Henry Ford, the famous American car manufacturer, said you can have any color car as long as it's black. And they could do that because they didn't have competition. So it's it's going back to those antiquated times where we're actually, instead of responding to real need and demand, the not-for-profit sector still is driven by donors, and it's changing slowly. A lot of donors are recognizing that that's a problem. They're recognizing that they're not the best placed, suited people to be making decisions over where millions of dollars or euros get spent. But unfortunately, the big bilateral, multilateral organizations, it's a massive machine to change, and they have very complicated metrics that they need to fulfill. So it's not easy for them to change, but much more family foundations and corporate foundations are now switching towards being more, focused on community-driven development and changing their funding model. And that's what social enterprise allows organizations to be relevant, to respond, to be nimble, to be effective, just like a company has got to be. However, it's very difficult for a social enterprise to be 100% self-financed. So often what you'll find is that there's a blend. They will still have, 20, 30, 40% of their funding coming from grants, depending on the life cycle of the social enterprise. So right now, 6 years in, we're 40% of our funds are self-generated, and we've got an organizational objective in the next 2 years to increase that to 60%. But can we at one point be 100% self-financed? Hopefully that will be the case. But it's an industry challenge. And the other challenge we have as a sector, as you well identified, because it's not well documented, is where do we fit from a taxation standpoint? It's a fairly new sector. So a lot of governments, this is internationally, don't know how to classify a social enterprise from a taxation perspective, because they're doing work that assists governments and reduces, costs and services that government need to provide, but they also have to make a surplus. So, a lot of countries have developed a taxation law that gives them a tax break, or doesn't tax them on their income. So each country's got a different, and in Lesotho we don't have a law yet for social enterprise. The nearest thing you can do is register as a not-for-profit company. So it's still very much a developing space, and a very exciting one to be in.
It is. I see, because when I was reading research, one researcher was saying, in fact, most people starting social entrepreneurship, providing solution all geared towards solving societal problems. They start as, not-for-profits, NGOs, and that is, so there was a little bit of confusion in terms of, so what is an NGO? What is a foundation? What is social entrepreneurship? Is it one and the same thing, or do we need to demarcate boundaries and differences between the three? But then I understand, as you're saying, the landscape, it can be cross-functional, and it's a new concept altogether. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, it's been around for about 25 years or so, but it's still very much developing. And yeah, so there is a gray space in the middle there, but ultimately, a social enterprise does have to sell or, sell a service or a product in order to generate funding, to
Yes,
self-finance.
yes. Uh-huh. So, what was one of the greatest challenges you faced in the beginning, when you started Rise International, and how did you get past that challenge?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, in our very first project, we had a lot of challenges and a lot of people. I mean, actually,
Yeah.
practically everybody, my mentors, my friends, um, told me to stop, quit while you're ahead. Especially when our main donor pulled out halfway through the project, and I had to
Yeah.
really and I would say that was the greatest challenge, the lack of land title that we worked around, the HR issues we worked around. But when you don't have money
Mm,
to buy the materials and pay the people to get the project finished, what do you do? But I listened
yeah.
to my gut, and my core. My father taught me my life values, my ethics is, you do not start anything unless you finish it. And in my heart of hearts,
Mm,
I honestly didn't know if Rise had a future after this one project was done, but I knew we could not walk
yeah.
away without finishing that project. So I went into my personal savings, went into the completing that project to
Oh,
make it happen,
yeah.
make it possible. And even if that was it, and that was going to be the end of Rise, I would have been, okay with that as long as we complete the project. So what kept me going was, a sense of responsibility to the community, the promises we'd made, and needing
Hmm.
to I knew that Rise would definitely not have a future if we didn't at least complete that first project. So I went against
Yeah.
everybody's advice, which was, quit while you're ahead, you're crazy, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Lesotho is a very difficult country to
Yeah.
work in. First of all, a lot of people,
Mm,
everyone I knew who had worked in Lesotho told me I was crazy to start the organization Lesotho. They were advising me to start in Uganda or Eastern Africa, which was the other option.
yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
do need to go with, I just went with my instinct and what my inner voice
Yeah.
was telling me, even though at times you feel crazy because it's against what everybody else is telling you to do. So you have to have
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
self-conviction and inner strength somehow. But at the end of the day, we're only responsible to ourselves. So you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, can I live with this decision? Because it's you answerable to yourself at the end of the day.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And has your organization expanded to any other African countries besides Lesotho?
Yeah, so we've just expanding at the moment actually into Kenya, which is where I'm actually speaking to
Ah,
you from right now. Right
yeah.
from the beginning, we've actually been approached by individuals and organizations from all over Africa. To partner with them, and we just have said, no, because not for now. We're still developing our curriculum, our module. We felt we still needed to run a number of cohorts before we were in a position to start expanding. And I'm happy to say we are now at that stage. We're also talking to two organizations, one in Mexico and one in Nigeria. So we are ready to expand, and we are slowly expanding. It's obviously going to, I think, adapt somewhat to each country. We ideally would like to partner with other organizations that can use the model, so we don't have to go through all of the legal, financial, human resource,
Hmm.
um, you know, work that you need to do to set up an organization in each country. We want to remain
Yeah.
sort of, if possible, that Lesotho is our pilot, our testing ground, and then we grow by partnering with other organizations and having a sort of partnership model. So that's our plan. Now we see what the universe will provide.
Of course, of course. Wow. Daniela, any advice you can dispense or perhaps nuggets of information for anyone out there who is interested in being a social entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say you need to first of all make sure that the service or product that you're offering does respond to a social or environmental problem that is substantial, that is scalable, so that there's going to be enough demand for your solution, because ultimately that's what you're going to be selling, is your solution. You have to be very passionate about it, because you're going to come across a lot of difficulties and a lot of challenges. And if you don't get up in the morning excited about facing those challenges, it's going to be a really, really, really hard journey. And you're probably going to end up giving up along the way. So you need to have a lot of personal conviction and passion about, what you're doing, and do your research properly. And then at some point you need to just try and test, because you can do all the sort of analysis and theoretical. I've got to say, we spent one whole year on Skype calls, myself and my two co-founders, Pedro and Luca, reiterating, hypothesizing, theorizing, coming up with different models. And at the end of the day, we're like, okay, we just need to start. And then you start, you experiment, you'll fail, you reiterate, you're open to learning, have that open to learning mentality. And we believe learning by doing, as long as you do no harm, and that's forefront in our minds. It sounds so basic, but it's so important. And then treat it like a journey. You have to be, things will change along the way. So embrace that change and try and find ways in which you can remain adaptable and nimble, so that you can respond to those changes fast. We saw that during COVID, and that was make or break for so many organizations, not just social enterprises, but, for-profit companies as well. And the ones that survived were the ones that were able to adapt and adapt fast, because that happened overnight with no preparation or no notice, and it faced the entire world. There was not one country that was absolved from it. So those are the kind of and then surround yourself by people, positive minded people. If you surround yourself by too many naysayers, have a couple of those voices, listen to those people, because then you can, as long as you've got answers to those are very good people, to play devil's advocate, so that you don't not see things coming as much as possible, and have that one person. For me, I mentioned him before, but it's my father. He's very good at pointing out all the angles and all the negatives, but then if you can answer fairly confidently to those, and you're not going to see everything coming, but think it through and surround yourself with the right sort of network of people. And don't be afraid of how long it's going to take you and how much work it's going to take as well. So if you can maybe have a side hustle or another form of income that you can do at the same time, to reduce your, financial risk, all the better. And try and be independent of choices. Be careful of partnerships. If you enter partnerships like equity partnerships, be sure, find out, are you going to enter, is this going to be a silent partner and a silent investor, or are they going to actually want to have a decision making? So be careful of who you partner with and how many people you partner with, before just saying, yes, you want equity. And then it results in other, because you're going to face so many challenges. And then if you have too many complications along the way internally and making decisions, ability to make payments, on the very basic of things, you're just setting up unnecessary hurdles for yourself.
This is so encouraging, Daniela. Thank you. Thank you for that. And in closing, what is a book that was pivotal in your journey of life in general, or your favorite book you can share with us?
Interesting question. Yeah, so it's not related to social enterprise, but it is related to a philosophy of thinking and being and a state of mind. And when I read it, I just felt, wow, this encompasses my way of thinking. And I always refer to it in my mind of how I want to be living my life. And it's called The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Although it's a philosophical book, it's written in a very sort of adventurous way. So it's a really nice read. It's a page turner, because you're reading about somebody's journey who's discovering a manuscript. And it's a certain amount of learning that we have to go through before we're ready for the next chapter, as it were. And it's just a wonderful book to, that was very inspirational for me as to how we should live our lives in a very open manner. And you never know who you need to learn a particular lesson from at that particular time in your life. And if you don't have the right state of mind to be open to that learning, then you're going to miss out. And if you miss out on that, it's going to prevent you from getting to that next stage in your life where you need to be. So it helped me a lot in remaining open, leading with love, and learning from other people.
Wow. Daniela, thank you. Thank you very much. This has been so encouraging, inspiring, and for me, and I know for everyone else out there listening. Thank you so much for coming to the Mesh podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to our show this week. If you enjoy our show and would like to support us, help us by spreading the word. Tell your friends about Mesh and engage on social media. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our handle is @Mesh Podcast. Mesh My Entrepreneurship Journey on LinkedIn. If you would like to engage with us privately, drop us an email at defoe@meshpodcast.com. Remember, we are available and streaming wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Defoe Machele, and you've been listening to My Entrepreneurship Journey.